True or false? Men are finished. That's what we are here to debate. Another verbal matchup from Intelligence Squared US. I'm John Donvan of ABC News. We are at the Skirball Center for the Performing Arts at New York University. Men are finished. Two teams will be arguing that proposition from opposite sides, one for it and one against it. These teams include Dan Abrams, my colleague at ABC News, where he is chief legal analyst and author of Man Down, which gives proof that women are unequivocally better than men. His debating partner is Hanna Rosin. She is a senior editor at The Atlantic and founding editor of XX, a woman-focused section of the online magazine Slate. Nothing like a packed house. Opposing them at the facing table, Christina Hoff Sommers. She is a philosophy professor and author of Who Stole Feminism and The War Against Boys. Her partner, David Zinczenko, Executive Vice President and Editor-in-Chief of Men's Health magazine. Now, this is a debate. It is a contest. One team will win and one team will lose in this joust of ideas. And you, our live audience here at the Skirball Center, will be functioning as our judges. By the time the debate has ended, you will have been asked to vote twice, once before the debate and once again afterwards, to register where you stand on this motion. Men are finished. And the team that has changed the most of your minds in the course of the debate will be declared our winner. So let's go to your preliminary vote. If you go to those keypads at your seat, they have numbers 1 through 3 along the top row. If you agree with the motion, men are finished, push number 1. If you disagree, push number 2. And if you're undecided, push number 3. And what we're going to do is tabulate those, and at the end of the debate, after the second vote, I'll present both numbers. And reminding you again, the team that has changed the most minds in the course of the debate will be declared our winner. So our motion is men are finished. And now on to round 1, opening statements by each debater in turn. And I'd like to introduce first for the motion, Hanna Rosin. She is an award-winning journalist for Slate and The Atlantic. Her 2010 cover story, which was titled The End of Men, provoked a firestorm of responses. She is now writing a book expanding on her theory that men are losing their dominance. And as a matter of fact, you went to high school at Stuyvesant, a few blocks away from here, where I understand you were a debater.
I was a debater, and I'm hoping I can channel that inner nerd tonight and bring it right back again.
Did you beat the boys a lot?
We beat everybody, but my partner was a boy, so I don't know if that counts.
Ladies and gentlemen, Hanna Rosin.
I'd like to welcome you all to this debate tonight. I'd even like to welcome the men to the debate tonight, although, of course, I pity you. Just kidding. Before I dive in, I just want to say, I just want to start with a definition. What do we mean by men are finished? We'd like you to think of this as the writing on the wall, as the sign that points to an inevitable future. And what I mean by that is that in order to win this debate, we don't have to prove that there are no male geniuses, that there's no more male CEOs, that Bill Gates and Steve Jobs are figments of your imagination, or that all the men are any minute going to be rounded up and locked up as only to be released every once in a while as sex slaves. That would be a preposterous standard. Maybe it sounds good to you guys. But what we do have to prove, and what we will prove, is that the world where men dominate the public sphere and where the male traits are the ones that lead to success is the world that we are currently saying goodbye to. We are living through an unprecedented moment in history where the power dynamics between men and women are shifting very radically. I'll start with the fundamentals. In 2010, for the first time ever, women became the majority of the workforce. This is kind of an amazing fact. As recently as the 1980s, the working woman was such a cool new sociological phenomenon that there were several sitcoms dedicated to her existence, which many of you might remember. Now she is the majority of the workforce. If you look back at your professional schools that you guys went to, law school, medical school, accounting, even business schools, you are likely to find that women are the majority of all of those schools. And last year, for the first time, women became 54% of all American managers. Now, how are men doing these days? They're doing very, very badly. The annual income of men peaked around 1973, which is just when women started to get going. Right now, 1 in 5 men are out of work, which is the highest percentage that's ever existed. Now, why is this happening? The very simple answer is college. Most economists agree that what you need to get ahead these days is pretty simple. It's just a college degree. But women, for some reason, are much better these days at getting college degrees than men. For every 2 men who get a college degree, 3 women will do the same. So why are women getting more college degrees? It's not that women are smarter, because they're not smarter. These days, men and women test about the same on standardized tests for both math and English. Now, I imagine that our opponents are going to concede that women do better in college, but then they're going to say, so what? Women are goody-goodies. Then they go to work and they just flame out and they never get anywhere else. But this is, of course, completely preposterous. For one thing, it's only been happening for about a generation and a half, and you already see the results in the economy. You already see that for women under 30 these days are making more money than men under 30, and that's really, really new. Also, women are getting much more aggressive than they ever were, which is something that's brand new. And also, the qualities that we think of as making a great leader are starting to be defined as more feminine than masculine. Now we're on to my favorite subject, which is male vanity. The new male vanity. Lose your gut. 30 red-hot sex secrets. Dave Zinczenko will recognize these phrases because they come from the cover of his magazine, Men's Health. Once upon a time, men's magazines used to actively flaunt their dominance and aggression. The very first issue of Playboy called women people who crush man's adventurous, free-loving spirit. These days, they seem to flaunt male insecurity. Men are fueling the rise in plastic surgery, hair products, and waxes. Now, from my opponents, you'll likely hear a lot of talk about the new generation, about how men are still geniuses, men are still inventors, how they drive the technology industry. First of all, we're talking about a tiny percentage of men. And they're more than balanced out by the men at the other end who are incarcerated or having trouble in school. It's perfectly possible that we'll have a handful of great inventors, and that still, broadly speaking, men are finished. You're also likely to hear about the Fortune 500 list and the echelons of Hollywood and how few women there are out there at the top. I hear this argument on nearly every panel that I'm on, and my answer is always the same. Duh. Men have been at this for 40,000 years, and women have only been at this for 40 years. So, of course, the world doesn't flip upside down overnight. But the writing on the wall is still clear. Men are finished, which is why you should vote for us.
Thank you, Hanna Rosin. Men are finished is our motion, and now here to speak against the motion, I'd like to introduce Christina Hoff Sommers. She's a resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. She is a critic of radical feminism and the author of The War Against Boys and also Who Stole Feminism? Does the answer to that question figure in to the argument you're going to make here tonight?
Oh, actually it does. I mean, in Who Stole Feminism, I argued against a very ferocious form of male-bashing feminism and in favor of a feminism that affirmed friendship and equality and mutual respect between the sexes, and I'm going to talk a lot about that tonight.
All right, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Christina Hoff Sommers.
First of all, men are not finished. Yes, indeed, women are joining men as partners in running the world. But they're not replacing them. Women are flourishing in ways which are unprecedented, exciting, glorious. But men have hardly vanished from the limelight. I mean, after almost 40 years of gender-neutral pronouns, men are still more likely than women to run for political office, start businesses, file patents, write editorials, tell jokes. They conduct the orchestras, they direct the great movies. They blow up things. Now, I admit blowing up things is problematic. I wish they would do less of it. Men commit most acts of wanton violence, but at the same time, it usually takes other men to stop them. The males are in decline crowd seem to imagine a world of consensus-building women happily and competently interacting and managing the new economy. They point to an explosion of jobs for nurturers and communicators, more social workers, veterinarians, dance therapists, teachers, The problem is that you can't sustain a network of nurturers and communicators without someone paying for it. You're still going to need ambitious, hard-driven innovators, manufacturers, engineers, construction workers, along with police officers, firefighters, and the military. Now, we're told that toughness and assertiveness, those are obsolete, fit for another age, not the 21st century. That's absurd. It's worse than absurd. It borders on being ungrateful and even elitist. It ignores the actions and virtues of the very people that make it possible for us to assemble here tonight and debate whether men are in decline. Now, Hanna concedes that men are still at the top of the pyramid, but she says, quote, men's hold on power in elite circles is loosening. Loosening? Yes, of course. I agree, and I welcome it. But it's not evidence of a female takeover. Women now hold a majority of college degrees, and they hold most of the jobs in fields like psychology, veterinary medicine, biology. It's quite likely women are not only going to compete with men, but surpass them in these fields, and indeed very exciting to behold. But those numbers don't hold in other fields. Math, technology, engineering, those are fields where men prevail by huge numbers. And give them time, says Hanna. Women have only just begun, and that women are in ascendancy. They're going to gain momentum. Where is it? I see no sign of it. According to a recent study by the Commerce Department, women's numbers in computer science and mathematics have actually gone down in the last 10 years. I mean, if Hanna were right, these trends, we would begin to see women taking over, or at least showing some progress. We see no progress, very little progress in those fields. Now ask yourself, is technology finished? Is engineering finished? Is the military finished? Are dangerous jobs like working on an oil rig or being a police officer or a roofer, a logger, are those finished? Why are we even having this debate about men's demise? The reason is we are living in an era you could call WAW. Women are wonderful. It's a phenomenon that's been identified by some psychologists, and it used to be fashionable to celebrate men's superiority over women when women were truly the second sex. Fortunately, those chauvinistic days are long gone. Today, a new kind of reverse chauvinism is in ascendancy, female chauvinism. Magazines, TV shows, yes, sitcoms, claim, the endless heroics about girl power, you go girl, claiming that women are better at everything. Women are better leaders, women are better communicators, all around better human beings. I saw one story that said women have better orgasms than men. The rules of the WA game make it impossible for men to win, because if women do something better than men, that's evidence of their superiority. If men outperform women, that's proof of discrimination and the continuing male culture. What you see tonight on the other side of the stage is an extreme form of the WA phenomenon. The idea that men are finished is crazy. Thank you.
Thanks. We are halfway through the opening statements of this Intelligence Squared U.S. debate. I'm John Donvan of ABC News, and we have 4 debaters, 2 teams of 2, who are fighting it out over this motion, men are finished. We have heard 2 of the opening statements, and now on to the third. I'd like to introduce Dan Abrams. He is Chief Legal Analyst for ABC News. He is also the author of a book whose title is a lot of fun to read. It is called Man Down, Proof Beyond a Reasonable Doubt that Women Are Better Cops, Drivers, Gamblers, Spies, World Leaders, Beer Tasters, Hedge Fund Managers, and just about everything else. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Abrams.
How the heck did Dan Abrams, a far too old to still be single guy, not particularly known as a feminist, end up writing a book about female superiority? Did he do it to meet women? Did he do it to pander? It's always frustrating to me when I'm asked about a single reason why I wrote the book. I did it for both reasons, and it's worked incredibly well. Now, can I definitively prove that women are really better spies or competitive eaters, or even they tolerate pain better than men for certain, or even my beloved chapter on women handling breakups better than men? I presented evidence, I presented studies, research, but certainly someone on the other side could attack those chapters. So let's put the frivolous aside and talk about the evidence that examines issues that are important. Hanna talked about women as students. They'll be better educated. They'll navigate tough economies better. They'll be better equipped for the workplace of the next generation. But I don't know, what about politics, finance, taking care of the planet? These are areas where the evidence is crystal clear, and maybe just as important, the trends for the future support women and also help explain why women lag in certain areas. Let's start with politics. Women vote more, period, both in number of votes and the percentage of the population. In terms of registered voters in the year 2000, 61% of women voted, 58% of men. In 2004, 65 to 62. 2008, with more women on the ballots, by the way, 66 to 62. Same thing in midterm elections. In 2010, 53% of those who voted were female. But wait, we are still tending to elect more men. 4 out of 5 being elected are men. In fact, in 2010, women gained no Senate seats and for the first time in 30 years lost House seats. This is true for now. But once the women voters and the men realize how much more effective female leaders are, it cannot continue. Men will be, if not finished, certainly marginalized. The very first research has come out this year evaluating men and women in Congress. The American Journal for Political Science reported this year that from 1984 to 2004, women won their home districts an average of $49 million more per year than their male counterpart. Finance. You don't need to survey the attitudes of the people in finance. 2009 and 2010, Wall Street Journal and New York Times published articles entitled "For Mother's Day, Give Her the Reins to the Portfolio," and how men's overconfidence hurts them as investors. Both presented multiple statistics that men were taking more risks based on less information, buying and selling more often, and losing more money. Female hedge fund managers outperformed their male counterparts from 2000 to 2009, according to hedge fund research, by a whopping 3%. Business Week reported that when the downturn began, funds run by women lost 9.6% compared to 19% for men. Yes, women are only a fraction of the hedge fund managers. Maybe they have to work harder to get there. Maybe these are the females who are at the top of the game. But in the world of finance, numbers should speak for themselves. And all other things equal, anyone who wants to make money ought to go with a woman. Finally, new studies show that women are more committed to protecting the planet. They recycle more. They're more likely to be green. They eat less meat. They take shorter trips, in part because they give and follow directions better than men. They take public transportation more. They are also better and safer bus drivers. They save gas by speeding less. They make more eco-purchases. Heck, God has decided that men are finished. Between 1995 and 2008, 82% of lightning strikes were on men. So bottom line, why are women still lagging in so many areas? 3 reasons. Married or unmarried, they're still primarily responsible for childcare. 2, they often lack the overconfidence of men. And 3, sexism. When number 1 may not ever change for certain, number 2 and 3 will. They must. And then us men are in big trouble.
Thank you, Dan Abrams. Men are finished. That is our motion. And now here to speak against the motion, David Zinczenko, who is Executive Vice President and Editor-in-Chief of Men's Health magazine. He is editorial director of both Women's Health and Prevention magazines, and he's a best-selling author. And Men's Health, it's about fitness, it's about technology, it's about handling your finances. So if men were going down the tubes, you would have your finger on the pulse of all of these areas.
We would know, John. Men aren't finished. Dan may be finished, but men aren't finished.
Ladies and gentlemen, David Zinczenko.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Dan. I want you to vote against this proposition, against this misguided motion, because it's preposterous. Men can't possibly be finished, because as all of you know, when men are finished, they roll over immediately and go to sleep. That's not happening. Clearly, men are not rolling over. Now, they will have you believe that that is the case. It's not. If anything, they continue to do what they have always done. Invent new technologies, makes them smarter, lead nations, build bridges, drive corporations, yes, win elections. Now, our opponents are arguing that men have lost their edge, that women now outpace men in both graduate and undergraduate degrees, while the world economy continues to place greater and greater importance on education. And men are certainly falling behind in this regard, as you know, through the man session or great he session. Nearly 78% initially of the job losses belong to men. Yes, men make up the largest sector of the unemployed. They are the majority of people in prison, in rehab, the majority of people who ought to be in rehab. All of the statistics that my opponents will be citing tonight are indicative of a trend. Women are beginning to catch up to men. But the pace of that progress is inexorably slow. According to the United Nations, women perform 2/3 of the world's work, but only earn a fraction of the world's income. Men own 99% of the world's property and rule 92% of its sovereign nations. Now, I didn't get through all of Freakonomics, admittedly, but these do not seem like winning statistics for that side. Obviously, the other 150 million American males out there aren't particularly alarmed either. I don't think anybody came through a gauntlet of men protesting the topic of this debate out there, burning their jockstraps. It may not be true that the male of the species is in fact stronger, braver, or more action-oriented in times of crisis. But we are certainly still asked to play an outsized role. It was still men who spent those long weeks in the Chilean mine. It's still men who make up 90% of the on-the-job deaths performing dangerous tasks at dangerous hours. It was still 343 firemen who lost their lives 10 years ago in the World Trade Center. And while women are clearly capable of heroic actions in desperate circumstances, I personally am in awe of Rupert Murdoch's wife. We are hardwired as a species to count on the comforts of masculine leadership. Even women who aspire to become leaders often seem to take on the trappings of masculinity. Consider Sarah Palin, who adopts such masculine traits as wearing black leather jackets, carrying a gun, and bragging about how hot her spouse is. Or Michelle Bachmann, whose tribute to traditional masculinity includes putting down gays and trying to pretend our daughters are still virgins. Yes, women are making enormous gains in education. They now earn the majority of graduate and undergraduate degrees. And I feel terrible, just terrible for Bill Gates and Barry Diller and Sergey Brin and Mark Zuckerman and Tyler Perry and Larry Ellison and Steve Jobs and all the other poor non-degree holding men who were too busy becoming billionaires to finish their homework. It's awful. That's so tough. It would have been much better if they had just stayed at home, stayed in school, taken on their share of the more than $1 trillion in student loan debt, the majority of which now belongs to, you guessed it, the fairer sex. Of course, there are self-made women billionaires, Oprah, Martha, J.K. Rowling, imaginative visions shared worldwide. But it's men who flood the patent offices with their big ideas. And until a woman invents the next Google or Facebook or iPad or Bassomatic, the economic inequality between men and women will not be righted in our lifetimes. So men are driven to achieve power and influence. Men aren't worried about losing out to women. They're still too focused on not losing out to other men. That's why men are not finished, and it's why you have to vote against this ridiculous proposition.
Thank you, David Zinczenko. And that includes round one of this Intelligence Squared U.S. debate. Our motion is men are finished, and we have two teams debating this motion. We have Hanna Rosin and Dan Abrams arguing for the motion that men are finished. They're saying that as a result of a changing economy and shifting cultural values, men who once, like it or not, were seen as the dominant sex, the bosses and the breadwinners, are now already in a deep slide to number 2 status. Arguing against them, saying that men are not finished, Christina, Hoff, Sommers, and David Zinczenko, they're saying that men are doing just fine, thank you, that they still hold most of the power, and besides, just because women are doing better, that does not mean that men have to be doing worse. We're in round 2, where the debaters are going to be able to talk directly to each other and take questions from you and from myself and from readers of Slate who are watching this debate online. And I'd like to start with initially with a question to the side that's arguing for the motion. And I think perhaps to you, Hanna Rosin, your opponents are making the case that part of the reason that the notion is afloat, that men are finished, is because there's an attitude about, there's a sense that women can only be doing better if men are doing worse, that this is a zero-sum game. So is it? Is it not possible for both sides to do well without this imbalance resulting?
It is possible, but it just doesn't work that way. I mean, if we can all agree that there was male dominance for a long time and that male dominance is over, then I think we agree that men are finished. So the resolution is about male dominance, which we've taken for granted for so many tens of thousands of years. And so even if you have parity, you have the end of male dominance.
Christina Hoff Sommers.
But the opposite of male dominance is not female dominance, it's mutuality.
That's fine.
and
Men are still finished. I mean, men are finished as the dominant sex. I'm not.
They
I don't
are
think
not
women
finished.
Are,
That's absurd. Even you agreed to it when you, in your opening, that you didn't want to say men are finished. You thought there might be inklings of a suggestion that it may be happening.
I mean, what's happening here is what needs to happen. They are in the ridiculous side of this issue, so they have to attempt to redefine it. If the issue is that the stranglehold on men is coming to the end, or men omnipotence is finished, well, two things would be happening. We would be conceding right off the bat that men's omnipotence is finished, and this debate would be taking place in 1962. Okay, the fact is that at this point we have come to accept a shared power structure between men and women, and it really doesn't matter. It's not the issue that we're really discussing here, which is why you have to vote against this motion.
Wait, what was that phrase you used? Surviving off the fumes of sexism? I think we have our finest example there.
Well, I want to make another point about police officers, which Christina made a reference to consistently, and I think it's indicative, actually, of the larger issue, which is people like to think, oh, you know, men will be the better police officers because they're bigger and stronger, and if I was out there and I needed someone, I'd want a big, strong police officer. Well, okay, in certain cases, but what if I told you that there is solid evidence to demonstrate that women can diffuse a violent situation better than men can? Okay, now instead of having to tackle the guy, you can get the guy to avoid a conflict altogether, and then avoid taxpayer lawsuits, and have less corruption within your police force. Suddenly we're looking at police officers in a totally different way. Does that mean that there's no advantage to being faster or bigger? No. But the number of times in real life, as opposed to the movies, where people are actually sort of running down across the street to catch the guy jumping over the fence is actually pretty far, it's pretty rare.
Christina, Christina Hoff Sommers.
First of all, don't trust Dan and his statistics. He has a fairly serious case.
And he's a columnist for Men's Health magazine. He has the hardest time getting his pieces through our fact-checking department.
Didn't you not claim in your book that women have better physical endurance? Did you not claim that women can take pain better than men?
Yeah.
Both of these things are false. There's a vast library of literature.
Childbirth.
Epidural. Invented by men.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, what's the question?
Endurance, physical endurance.
Yeah.
You think that women have better physical endurance?
That there is an advantage that women have with estrogen and fat that provides them an advantage.
Fat?
It's true, yeah. It's true.
I rest my
it
case.
Allows,
I
it
rest my
allows
case.
women to engage in certain endurance activities better and longer than men. That does not mean they're faster.
Name one activity.
I'll tell you one. In the ultra marathons is the only race where women can beat men. Okay,
Don't clap. He's just wrong. He's got.
It's not true. Am I making it up?
You are making it up.
That a woman won the ultra marathon. It's the only sport where men versus women that women. I didn't say always win. Women can win.
Oh, one woman won in the Mojave Desert
Wait a sec.
couple of years ago.
Wait a sec. Wait a sec.
There's a
the
huge
fact that
record.
a woman beat a man in an athletic competition is unheard of. The bottom line is men are still better athletes than women. Men are stronger than women and they're faster than women. But the one area where women can compete is in areas where it requires excessive endurance. And these ultra marathons are 135 miles plus.
Christina, I want to put a question to you. A question to you. You talked about fields where men's, I would say, brawn is relevant. Firefighters, the people who protect us, soldiers. You mentioned loggers. And they're kind of creating a world where they're saying it's more important now to be a blogger than to be a logger. that it's a Facebook world, and the Facebook world works better for women in many different ways, the social skills, et cetera. So I just want you to take on that notion that structurally we're changing so that the relevance of female characteristics to the economy, their economic value, has become enhanced, while male so-called characteristics, brawn, for example.
I don't disagree with Dan or Hannah that there's a female ascendancy, which I find as exciting as both as a woman and grandmother of Eliza. I like to see these opportunities for women and women moving into centers of power. But again, I insist that what they're doing is forging a partnership with men in running the world. They're not taking over. And women and men are equal but different.
It's just not what
I'd
they
like
do.
to go to the audience for some questions now.
Hello, my name is Alicia Bonner, and I am a graduate of a girls' high school, a women's college, and I earn percent more than my fiance. I'm interested in a couple of the things that David and Christina posed, and hearing Dan and Hannah, your responses. David, you spoke about financial inequality and how 92% of the world's resources are in the hands of men, and X% of the countries in the world are governed by men. Christina, you seem to allude to the fact that anything that women are able to do, it's because men are there to earn money to fund it, which I think might be a little bit more problematic. How do we overcome this? Yes, in the middle class, you know, women are holding the bag, as you say, but at the upper level, at the most visible level, and if money talks, when is that power going to lie with women?
Yeah, take it down, Abrams first. Bring it up.
I think that eventually the results are going to speak for themselves. When people start thinking about and hearing about and learning about how much more effective female political leaders are, for example, I think that there will be a change. People will vote differently. Remember, when people say to me, "Oh, why are there so many?" Look, women should be blaming themselves with regard to voting, because women are the majority of the voters out there. But what's interesting is when you get more female candidates, you don't necessarily get a change with regard to the voting habits of women. So the answer to your question is, I think when it comes to newscasters, when it comes to political leaders, and I think in a lot of these other areas, that in finance, I think that ultimately the results will speak for themselves. And that's part of the reason why I think this proposition of men are finished, while certainly hyperbole, if you look at the results, it is a dangerous world upcoming. Not today, a dangerous world coming for men.
Other side?
I mean, I think buildings are always going to fall down, things are going to burn. You're always going to need men to get in there and do the dirty jobs, do the dangerous jobs. The world is becoming more dangerous than ever. I think that a lot of the leaders of the world, as we discussed, are men. And I think you have to get the country running right here first. You have to, focus on health and wellness. I think the universal health care is a step in the right direction. Men and women are partners, and once that happens, but it's a long ways away right now. You're right, it's 16% of women are in Congress. 16% of women are serving on the board of corporations. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
To Dan and Hannah, even as women take over, if you will, and I agree the trends are there's no question about it, wouldn't there be inevitably a sort of market adjustment whereby men will learn from women how to be better CEOs, how to be better political leaders, better administrators, better members of society, and that ultimately it won't mean that anybody's finished, but that there will be a balancing and an improvement?
Christina, why don't you take that first, and then we'll come to the other side.
Yes, I don't disagree that there's going to be transformation. This debate is not about whether or not we're in a period of transformation and women's roles are changing. Of course they are. So I'm not contesting that. What I'm contesting is this very aggressive, dramatic resolution defended by my colleagues that men are finished. So I oppose that, but as far as men improving, I think they will. I think
Hanna
they
Rosin?
always have faced challenges and hard times and overcome them, and they will do the same now.
Hanna Rosin.
That's the best case scenario, and that's what I wish would happen. However, like I said, there's just all this evidence that men don't respond that well and are not that flexible. People, like she says, people have measured things for many, many years about male preference. People have measured male feelings about male identity. Now, female feelings about what's okay as a woman, and people have measured this for college students and adults, have changed radically. Women now think it's much more okay to be aggressive in the workplace, it's much more okay to win. They ask a series of questions. The male identification self-identification hasn't changed basically in 60 years. Men always think it's only acceptable to be a guy in this tiny, narrow range, and they're always defining themselves against women, not towards women, where women are always doing the opposite, which is they're defining themselves as more aggressive, competitive, etc. Why? I don't know why. I don't know if that's biology or what, but that's just how it is. So we would hope so, but we don't know.
Certainly women have made enormous gains and will continue to make them, and we should support all of them, but it's not what we're debating here tonight. And it's funny the point that Hannah made about men's health as a lose your gut type magazine. Well, let's get back to that for 1 second, okay? This right here is the world's leading women's magazine, okay? Right
David,
here.
for the radio audience, tell us what you're holding
This is
up right now.
Cosmopolitan, okay, which just happens to be the world's leading women's magazine. I think they're in like 97 countries or something. Left side, 21 naughty sex tips, bold, breathless moves.
Wait, so why do you want to be like that? then?
Shrink your inner thighs in 6 minutes a day. Times he wants you to be jealous. 4 words that seduce any man, anytime. This magazine is concerned, it seems like women are concerned a lot with men, okay? Then we go over to a magazine like Men's Health, which also happens to be the world's largest men's magazine. And now here you have gym-free abs.
You know this is a
melt fat with
non-profit
beard.
organization. So we are in the middle of the question and answer section of this Intelligence Squared U.S. debate. I'm John Donvan, your moderator. We have 4 debaters, 2 teams of 2, and they are debating this motion, men are finished. So let's go to another question.
My name is Jay Searson. I'm one of the few men in that own your own company entrepreneurial category, so I'm not finished, I think. So suppose that just before Tom Edison invents the light bulb, all the candlestick makers are Irishmen. After Edison invents the light bulb, all those candlestick making jobs go away, and things look pretty bad for the Irish. But nobody would say that it's the end of Irishmen. It's the end of candlestick makers. And we've just had a housing bubble that eliminated a ton of construction jobs. And those construction jobs were overwhelmingly male because men actually had a genetic advantage doing construction.
Okay, so in the first recession, that's what we thought. We thought, oh, it's just the end of construction jobs. And then in the second recession, we thought, oh, it's just the end of, pipeline fitter jobs. And then we thought it's just the end of this and the end of that. And then suddenly we realized, no, it's actually the end of the manufacturing era. So you realize that this was a trend that was not going to go away or reverse itself, and that all these jobs that men happened to do were sort of shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and they were never going to come back. So, I don't know, you want me to say it's like the end of manufacturing?
No,
Let's hear from your opponents. Christina.
First of all, I just don't accept the idea that the jobs that men will hold in the future they're all going to have to be dance therapists or, executive producers. If you look at the projections from the Labor Department, we're going to need millions and millions of engineers and people that are experts in information technology there, and there's still going to have to be people constructing and manufacturing. So it's naive to suggest that we're moving away entirely from jobs that were conventionally done for men.
Do you want to?
I would just say I completely agree with the point about trends. They're called trends for a reason. They don't last forever. That's why we're not all walking around.
No, they're called trends because they're true.
But it misses the point, which is that the more important point, directly responding to your question about the candlesticks, is that what we're seeing in society today, and Hanna has studied this a lot more than have I, is the idea that the people who are making candles and engaging in jobs that are becoming outdated, or whatever the case may be, women have figured out a way to navigate the tough economy better than men. And they are simply adapting better than our men. And that's the really important point here. It's not just that the male jobs are being eliminated.
Thank you.
Yes, hi. Hello. Diane Salvatore, editor of Prevention Magazine. Is it true that that men with power and money tend to self-destruct more than women do? And I think here of Oprah versus Charlie Sheen. Thank you.
Or how about anybody versus Charlie Sheen?
That's why I said before that Dan is probably finished, but not others.
I'm just thankful to
Hanna
you for
Rosin.
mentioning Charlie Sheen, because I feel like you just say Charlie Sheen enough times and everybody will vote for us.
You spoke earlier about bloggers versus loggers. I guess everybody would agree that technology is the new frontier. And if you look at Silicon Valley, it is dominated by young men. Well, what do you say to that?
Well, whenever I look
Hanna
at these
Rosin.
questions, because we always think, oh, men are better at technology, they're better engineers, I do in my head what I call the cross-border biology check. Now, what is the cross-border biology check? I try and think, okay, is this just something we think is true because we look at it and we assume it ever has to be true? Well, in India, half of engineering students are women. Now, why is that? Because it's encouraged in India and because that's something everybody has to do. It's not something that men are necessarily better than women at. So I just feel like eventually that will be true here, too. We put an emphasis on it, and women will do it.
Correction about India. In countries like, people often say, look at India, and look at Malaysia, women are the engineers, and far more women are becoming physicists. In those countries, women don't have as much of choice of what they do. Because of economic pressures, they are forced to do careers. In a society where there's more prosperity, women have more choice, and they go into other fields. And that's why if you look at what American women are majoring in, it's, art history and education, all sorts of things. They're not forced to do something they don't want to do. Men do, that is their number one choice in college majors, or it's of all the majors, that's the one men choose, I guess, after business, and whereas women, it's teaching. So there are differences, and that, again, I'm insisting that we need both in the new economy.
Leslie Bennett, Newsweek Daily Beast. The moderator started out by saying that increasingly men are not assuming the responsibilities of parenthood. Both the men on the panel who are middle-aged, single, and childless would be examples of this. And I'd like to know why they think that this is so often the case these days. Men are marrying less and less. Men are not supporting their families. The statistics on the non-payment of things like child support are astronomical. And that's always been one of the hallmarks of adulthood. I'd like to know what the panel has to say about that.
Since I'm being lumped in with deadbeat dads, I think I'll probably pass on this one.
You know, I mean, a generation or two ago, by the time men were in their late 20s, they often had 3 or 4 kids.
Okay.
This is not the model today.
But
I'm
women are
interested in
also
what
having
the men have to
but,
say
but, but
about
women
this.
are also having children later. I mean, this is not a male-female
But a
issue.
lot of women are having children alone because men don't want to participate.
Okay.
Yeah, no, if we
or
look
because,
at,
go ahead.
if we look at this from
Hanna
the
Rosin.
children's perspective and the children in this sort of 59% that I was talking about, we would definitely win, and you would definitely have to vote for men are finished. It's like a shocking phenomenon. 40% of American children are now born to single-parent households. You could say that's because, you know, the women have decided that the men are finished. They don't need them. They don't contribute to the household. You know, the women are the ones doing all the work and going to school, and the men are just sort of another child in the house to feed, which is what all the women tell me. I wish that it was funny, but it's not funny. That's the part of this that's a tragedy about men are finished.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes round 2 of this Intelligence Squared U.S. debate. And we are about to hear closing statements from each debater in turn. They will be 2 minutes each. And remember how you voted before the debate. Right after these closing statements, we're going to ask you once again to vote. And the team that has changed most of your minds in the course of the debate will be declared our winner. So on to round 3, closing statements. Our motion is this: men are finished. And here to summarize her position against the motion, Christina Hoff Sommers, resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute and author of The War Against Boys.
Thank you. I urge you to vote against this proposition for 3 reasons. Number 1, it's false. Okay. Women are not replacing men. Women are not becoming the first sex. Women are becoming partners with men. Men continue to do most of the arduous and dangerous work, and they are the primary risk takers and innovators. Society is driven by what the classical economist Joseph Schumpeter called the gale of creative destruction. Women can cause such gales, but it has always been a masculine specialty, and there is 0 evidence that that is changing. Now, as I said in my earlier remarks, men have been doing less well in the classroom, but this does not herald the end of men. Rather, it means that we have to find ways of making our schools more effective for male students. Reason 2, you should oppose this proposition. It's chauvinistic. As I said, in the old days, we had female supremacy. It's been replaced by this variety of women are wonderful phenomenon. The bad old days of male supremacy are now followed by this female chauvinism. So I believe that an act in favor of this proposition is a vote for chauvinism. Third, and most important, the sexes need each other. They complement each other. They have been known to love one another. As Henry Kissinger once said, no one will ever win the war between the sexes. There's just too much fraternizing with the enemy. Now, women and men do not succeed at one another's expense. We're on the same team. We're codependent. That was true on the African savannah 100,000 years ago. It has been true ever since. It's true in 21st century America. You can certainly find times when one sex has acquitted itself just better than the other, but you will never find examples of one sex becoming irrelevant. Such a development is beyond anything in human experience. I urge you to vote in favor of reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina Hoff Sommers. Our motion is men are finished, and here to summarize her position in support of this motion, Hanna Rosin, an award-winning journalist for Slate and The Atlantic.
I'm going to start out by reading you a couple of quotes. One is from a story called The Decline of the American Male. Men, this writer says, are endangered species. They are expendable. Another quote, women have gained in the past century while men have fallen behind. Who is this mystery author? Dave Zinczenko is the mystery author who wrote this story at USA Today in 2009. He keeps saying, this is preposterous, this is preposterous. Merely 2 years ago, he thought that it was true. Now I'm going to read you another series of quotes. It is boys who are the second sex. It's a bad time to be a boy in America. The research, listen to this closely, commonly cited to support claims of male privilege and male sinfulness is riddled with errors. Who is the mystery author of this article? Christina Hoff Sommers, who's also saying that this is all very preposterous. So as you can see, it's not that preposterous. We can all see the writing on the walls. They keep talking about how men are still running the countries, men are still doing this, men are still doing that, but that's not interesting. That just shows a lack of imagination. As we said, this men are finished proposition, you literally have to think of it as graffiti, as the writing on the wall pointing to an inevitable future. All the signs are there. And then the final thing I want to say is Christina says this is a vote for chauvinism, that men are finished is a vote for chauvinism. Don't think of it that way. You're actually doing a public service to men if you vote for our team. Because I think if we finally acknowledge that this is a problem and that men are finished and that they need our help and they might even need some affirmative action, then maybe we would behave the right way and we would help the men who desperately need our help. So remember, vote for men are finished.
Thank you, Hanna Rosin. Our motion is men are finished, and here to summarize his position against the motion, David Zinczenko, Executive Vice President and Editor-in-Chief of Men's Health magazine.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you. Hats off to Dan and Hannah. That article, by the way, was arguing for better health care for men. There are 5 offices of women's health in the federal government, 0 for men. That was really the context. Now, my opponents tonight have outlined some trends that seem to herald the final descent of the American male into a metaphorical trash heap of irrelevance and impotence. They are trying to bury legions of men alive, okay? You have to vote against this measure. Sure, there are some worrisome trends. They went through them, okay? And as we all know, once a trend starts, it keeps going on forever. That's why all of our houses are worth so much more today than they were in 2007. Now, in the end, there are 2 reasons why you must vote against this motion. Because they might be wrong, but they might be right. Now, the first point, consider this. Gender equality is something we can all agree on as an ideal. But if we are approaching gender equality, why are there fewer women in government today than there were 10 years ago? Why is it so much easier for men to hold on to their gun rights than it is for women to hold on to their reproductive rights? Not only aren't men finished, but women haven't even begun. Let's at least get to the point where the game is tied before we start writing all the men off. Let's imagine, though, that the trend toward greater female political, social, and economic power continues unabated. Highly unlikely, because the Great Recession started with men, and now it's starting to hit predominantly female jobs more than before, and the scales are tilting. So you have more educated, independent, single women there are, the more wonderful the world will actually get for men, okay? So regardless of whether we one day achieve gender equality, men are not finished, and by the way, women are not either. You have to vote against this measure.
Thank you, David Zinczenko. Our motion is men are finished, and here to summarize his position in support of the motion, Dan Abrams, Chief Legal Analyst for ABC News and author of Man Down.
It seemed at times that our opponents were pleading to you as a moral matter to vote against this. It would be wrong, be horrible. Look what would happen. You would make the guys feel bad. Look, the reality is that we're not just talking about women catching up. We're talking about women surpassing men. Both Hannah and I have talked to you in depth and at length about how significantly women have not caught up, but surpassed men in very significant areas in our society. David mentioned before that you're not going to see jockstrap protests outside. That's right. That's part of the problem, is that men are not alarmed by the situation. And that's one of the main reasons that men are finished, is they don't seem to care. They think it's cool to be a slacker. It's not. Dave mentioned the Chilean mines and the miners there as an effort to sort of pull at your heartstrings, and there's no question that that was a heartfelt moment. But what if a woman had designed that mine? I'm guessing that we might not have ever had that sort of problem. I will end with one note from my book, which is that there was a study done on how long it takes men and women to get ready to leave the house. And this study in England of 2,000 people showed that men take on average 4 minutes longer. When you think about a Saturday night, no question, women will take longer to get ready to leave the house. But when you think about the realities that women face every day of bringing up children, of working a job very often, of doing all the hard work and trying to get ready to leave the house, it starts to make sense. And if that study's true, then men really are finished.
Thank you, Dan Abrams. And that concludes our closing statements. And now it's time to learn which side you feel has argued the best. Remember, we've asked you to vote before the debate began, and we're going to ask you to vote against now, judging the quality of these arguments. You go to the keypad at your seat. Our motion is this: men are finished. If you agree with the motion or feel that the argument was presented best on that side, you push number 1. If you disagree, you push number 2. If you remain or became undecided, you push number 3. Okay, I'm going to announce the results, and I want to do it this way. So these debaters have spent the last hour plus trying to win you over to their point of view on our motion. Men are finished. We had you vote once before the debate and once again at the end of the debate. Both of those votes are now in, and here are the results. Before the debate, with the motion being men are finished, 20% were for the motion, 54% were against, and 26% undecided. After the debate, 66% are for the motion. That's up 46%. 29% are against. That is down 25%. 5% undecided. That's down 21%. The side arguing for the motion, men are finished, has carried our debate. Our congratulations to them. Thank you from me, John Donvan, and Intelligence Squared US. We'll see you next time.